Big one.
So the one on the wall is working? You gotta get really close. Keep going. Here, let me try. 93.7. Are you okay?
Yeah, I should be dead.
Yes.
But I have to be back. I don't know my daycare.
No, but when I did it, you sure you're okay?
I don't think I saw her go in there.
Big farm. Down off.
I'm here.
Ms. Fuller, can you hear me now? Thank you. Can you hear me now? Thank you.
Okay, we've got everything done. We'll reconvene the meeting. Now I'm asking again for nominations for vice chairman.
I'll nominate George Deloach for vice chair.
Ms. Wilson's nominated George Deloach, and Ms. Owens has seconded it. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I'll close that, and I guess that it just solves itself, does it not? Or do we still have to call for a vote? Have to call for a vote?
Yes.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, ma'am. I did too for a minute. Congratulations, Mr. Deloach. You're the new vice chair. Okay, let's move along to approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from November 19th to 2020 planning board meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Please remember to use your microphones. The blue light must be on.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
There's a motion to accept them with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimously done. Okay, we're moving into public comments. Where's it at? Okay, that's what I was looking for. This is the appeal. This is the appeal process. Any person wishing to appeal any decision made by the planning board with respect to any matter considered at such a meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purposes may need to ensure that verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. Florida statutes 286.105, persons with disabilities requiring accommodations in order to participate in this meeting should contact the city clerk's office at 329-0100 at least 24 hours in advance to the request of to the request accommodations. Public comments. So now we'll move on to the public comment section. And the first we have a card here in front of me, Miss Edith Vanderpool. If you would come to the podium and tell us your name and your address, please.
My name is Edith Vanderpool. I live at 1010 South Palm Avenue. My comment has to do with the letter that I was sent, PB case 2101. It shows my property, 1010, just south of property that's wanting to be annexed into the city, as only 50 feet wide. My property is actually 77 feet wide. I have a copy of my deed and a copy of my survey here, but it appears you're showing 50 feet, so it appears that part of my property is in this shaded area.
Be patient with me. I'm trying to find the map that we have here.
Okay.
And your PB 21-01 for the future.
Yeah,
Okay.
case 2101.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And which one of these pictures? I mean, I'm not quite understanding what you're wanting us to do here.
On this map,
Yes, ma'am.
you're only showing my property as being 50 feet wide, but my property is 77 feet.
Okay.
So it appears to me that part of my property is in your shaded area.
Okay. I don't know that we would deal with that as the planning board right now. The attorney? Or,
This is a GIS map from the property appraiser's records. It's usually based on deeds, but that can be resolved in a different case. We're just dealing with their property right now.
okay.
They'll have a survey, so it shouldn't be a big issue when they get it fixed.
Okay. So she needs to go to the property appraiser's office
Yes,
and talk to them.
Property appraiser's
Yes, ma'am.
office? Okay,
Yes,
it's on
ma'am.
4th Street.
excuse me?
It's on 4th Street, but they're connected with the tech, but they're
They're the ones that would correct that for you, Ms. Vanderpool.
All right,
Thank you for your time and your comment.
thank you.
Have a great day. Stay well. And now we have Valerie Thomas. Is that the one that's speaking next? Is she in public speaking or is she?
Valeria Thomas is our city attorney.
Okay, I don't know those things. Okay.
All 4 lines on the phone are for public comment for case A for 2102.
Okay, so basically with the public hearing part of it, we're done. We just need to move on into the,
And you can take those comments at the time of that case being heard if you'd like, yes, sir.
okay. And that's the first one, right? Okay. All right. I guess we need to hear the case of 2101 requesting to annex approximately 1.53 acres of property into the city. Amend the future land use map from commercial Putnam County to city of Palaca Commercial C and rezone from Putnam County retail commercial C2 to city of Palaca C2.
interim county planning director, city planning director. Some of you may know me from the county. I worked there for 22 years, plus a couple additional moments, but I'm here now on Don's request until I can find another planning director. The application is for the old Krill and Palm vet clinic property. It's been commercial for a long time. The applicant will be tearing down the structure that's there now, and we'll rebuild a small commercial property if it's approved on the property. The surrounding area of the property is pretty much commercial along Krill Avenue in that area. There's residential to the south. For the annexation, this voluntary annexation for water and sewer has to meet two tests. One is it's contiguous of city property. The map on figure 1 shows that it's contiguous on two sides. And it doesn't create an enclave. It actually starts removing an enclave. And the other one is compactness that requires annexation for properties of a single area that preclude any action that would create or increase enclave pockets or finger areas in the serpentine patterns. This is actually reducing an enclave, so it meets those connections. Connection to water and sewer is available on the site in question. The applicant intends to remove the existing building, as I said, and construct a small retail store on site. Store would not be a major water user or generating large amounts of effluent, so it should have not a problem with the water and sewer connectivity. Most of you, I think, have had the staff report, so I won't read it to you, but basically we've looked at all the different conditions that this has to meet, and the staff recommends that it does meet those, and recommends that the request to annex the property of 1.53 acres to the city be approved, and further recommends that the amendment to the future land use from Putnam County Commercial to to City of Palatka Commercial be approved. And the staff recommends further that Putnam County Retail C2 is rezoned to Palatka Commercial Intensive C2. Are there any questions by the board?
Questions?
So basically, it's just going exactly from the county into the city.
Yep.
Just mirroring it, going into it.
Yep.
And the
Commercial
water and the
in
sewer.
the county, it's
Okay.
commercial in the city, or would be commercial in the city if it's approved.
Okay.
Demo and everything that's on it.
Yes.
You say they're going to demo?
Yes. It's an old building. It's not really conducive to much of anything, so that they're going to build a new building.
Is it gonna be convenience store serving just a store? Is it,
It's a retail sales building. It's probably going
are
to
they
be
gonna serve
convenience.
gas, sell gas or?
I don't believe they're going to sell gas. They're not showing that on what they've showed us. It's just basically a store to go in and buy stuff.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, at this time, have public comment on this case.
The applicant is here, or the agent.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Holly White, 720 Southwest Second Avenue, Gainesville, Florida, 32605. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. As he said, we're wanting to annex this site and do the future land use amendment and rezoning associated with that. It is commercial at the county. The sewer and water was extended to the western property line that we are looking at. Looks about 2014. So we would just like to connect to that sewer, potable water and sanitary sewer that's available there. So that is the purpose of the annexation. It is actually two parcels. It's the vet clinic and then the parcel to the west of it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the board?
Do you have any idea what's going there? Is it going to be a convenience store?
It will be a discount retail store, not a convenience store with gas stations.
Okay. Is it a chain or anything?
It is a chain.
Dollar General.
No, there's already one a couple sites down.
That's Family Dollar.
That's Family Dollar. So. Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Okay, now, We'll go to public speaking or public speak part of it. Anybody that has anything to say about it? We have, Ms. Krantz, we have people online.
Yes, sir. They're line 1 and line 3 are holding.
Okay, and so just press line 1. And now,
Hello, caller. You're on the line.
speaking or
Yes, ma'am.
part of it, anybody that has anything to say about it? We have Ms. Krantz, we have people online.
Yes, sir, there's line 1 and line 3 are holding.
Okay, so. Okay, caller, you're on the line now.
Okay, sir.
State your name and your address, please.
Let me turn the volume down to the computer. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Quincy Masters. You need my address.
Yes, sir.
3013 Krill Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Let me turn the volume down on this phone. Am I talking to Ed Killebrew?
Yes, sir, you are.
Hey, Ed. Okay, first of all, I know y'all have like a thankless job. So let me just pause to say thank you for what y'all do.
Well, thank you.
You're certainly welcome. Now, did I understand someone just say this is going to be a Family Dollar store?
No, sir, you did not. That was a question that somebody else asked.
Okay. But we don't know what kind of retail. Could this be like an Adam and Eve porn store?
I was just told no.
I mean, would the zoning allow an Adam and Eve porn type store?
That's,
No, they would require further stuff for anything like that to go in there.
did you hear that, Quincy?
Not exactly.
They would require further things to happen for that to go in there.
Okay. Further permission, whatever.
Can we
I did
ask
notice
the
that
representative?
B2,
She just
this
said,
could allow entertainment. It could allow lodging. And to me, there's no guarantee that this will be, we still don't know what kind of discount store it's going to be, but it may not always be a discount store. It could say, so, well, I think we're going to turn this into a motel where, then it turns into a sleazy motel. And then you've got stuff going on illegally at this motel. It said in C2 that this could be used for entertainment. And you've got a whole bunch of people living out behind the property, including Edith Vanderpool, and I live near there. And there's no guarantee it won't be entertainment in the future where you have loud music at night. So I'm very concerned about the rezoning or the transfer of zoning. And that's why I'm asking y'all to vote against the decision, because I'm concerned of what could come in the future. And even though we're being told it'll be a discount store, is there any guarantee of that? So, and there's no guarantee of what it could be in the future, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. And again, we got all these people living out behind that property. And what it could be in the future, I'm very concerned about. And that would be my comment.
okay, thank you, Mr. Masters. Is that it?
As far as I can figure, yes, sir.
Okay, have a great day. Stay well.
Okay, I'll be listening in, see how y'all vote.
Okay.
Oh, one more question. One
Yes,
more
sir.
question. I guess this is for the city attorney. I think this is to change the zoning. And does the city of Palatka have the authority to change zoning of property that is not in the city?
The annexation would happen first, and the rezoning and future land use would happen after that.
So what you're saying is you do have the authority to change the zoning, even though the property does not lie in the city.
Mr. Masters, we're just voting on the annexation of it today. And
Okay.
No, we're not. We've got the zoning too. Okay, voting on all three of them, but we're just bringing it in the annexation into
Correct.
the city. And we're not changing any zoning from what the county was. We're just switching it back and just bringing it into the city.
So C2 is the same for the city and the county.
Correct,
It's the same restrictions,
pretty much.
pretty much, but not altogether. See that? There's red flags going up right there.
Okay, Mr. Masters, thank you very much.
All right, again, I just ask y'all not to vote for this because we're just not sure what we're getting into here, and we all live out behind that property.
Okay,
Very much.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, line 3. This is Ed Killebrew, Chairman of the Planning Committee.
Hello?
It's your turn, sir. If you'll give us your name and address.
Sure, yes. My name is Josh Cohen, and I own the plaza across the street at 3210 Krill Avenue. And I believe most of my questions may have been answered. I was curious about what the rationale was for the annexation, and if I'm hearing it right, it's basically to tap into water and sewer. And I did have a question of what was actually going on the site. I heard discount retail. I'm just curious if we know what size has been planned for that site and if they do have a particular tenant in mind at this point.
It's a relatively small site, and they have to get parking on there and landscaping and screening, and so it's not gonna be a real large building.
That answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I guess so. But so you don't have a tenant in mind yet?
We as a board do not know that right now.
Right. But the applicant, I guess,
Sorry.
whose representative is here today, I guess.
Yes, their attorney? Or
She's an
representative?
agent.
Engineer. The engineer's here, and you're saying what? I'm sorry, you missed.
I was just saying, I can respond to the questions that have
Okay, if you
come
would,
up so
please.
far. So the use, we'll just say it is a Dollar General. The Family Dollar store is directly adjacent to it, so they will be side by side, kind of following the old CVS and Walgreens. So the plans are underway for that. They have been submitted to the city of Palatka for review. The engineering plans, so the site is laid out. This is a use that is allowed in the county, exactly as we have shown with a little less parking. That's the major difference between the site plan when we propose it in the county versus the city. But being told that we needed to annex to connect to the city sewer and water, that's why we're on this journey now. So it is a use that is allowed in the county exactly as is. And as I said, city zoning and Palatka or in Putnam County zoning are very similar.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, sir?
I guess the only, yes, for the most part. Do you know how many square feet the structure is in the plan?
It is about 10,640 square feet.
10,400. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Have a good day. Stay well.
You too. Take care.
Do we have any more online for this particular case, Ms. Krantz? I see the phone's flashing, so.
Ms. Fuller advised that line 4 is the parking pads. Ms. Fuller, is there anything additional?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So at this point, we'll close the public speaking. If there's nobody else to speak. Yes, ma'am.
Just have a question for the young lady here. Will there be a barrier between that property and my property?
It's
And what
required by the
What
zoning
kind
ordinance.
of barrier, pardon me?
It's required by the zoning ordinance. Buffering and screening is required there. We will see what they offer. We'll check it with the zoning ordinance to make sure that it's adequate And then they'll have to put in what we both agree with.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Vanderpool, can you give us your name and address? I got her card up here, Mayor. She already spoke one time. So could you, just. Okay. All right, now. Forgive me. This is a new thing for me. Yeah, I appreciate that. At this point, is there we'll close the public speaking and open up discussion among the board members? Yes, Mr. Boss?
We're a tree city, and the last Dollar General that came in, they cleaned all, I'm sorry. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
We're a tree city in Palatka, and the last Dollar General up on Reed Street, they took all of the huge 48-inch oak trees out. I mean, and they just pretty well cleaned the property off, slicked it off, because it is cheaper engineering that way, and it's cheaper construction. When are we going to see what you plan on doing with the property as far as a building and landscape ordinance? We've got a landscape ordinance in the city.
Yeah, well, that'll come through. If it gets approved by the city commission, then we will go through the process of going through that part of the ordinance to make sure that it meets the requirements in the ordinance.
So the landscape ordinance will be adhered to?
Yes.
But if I remember right, Mr. Wallace, on this piece of property, I don't think there's any trees on it.
I didn't count them.
Yeah, I'm not, the one on Krill Avenue.
I didn't count them. I'm not saying there are, they're not. I know that the last Dollar General,
Yes, sir.
they slicked it off. It was cheaper. The ponds would work that way, no additional engineering. And we ended up with no trees and a big yellow building sitting on the corner.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you question, I didn't count the trees.
Yeah. No, I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying I don't think there's any on the Krill Avenue
I didn't
property.
count them.
Ms. Ross?
I have a comment. I live fairly close, and we need to be more open-minded with what we want to come into the city. How many more Dollar Generals, Dollar Trees, dollar stores do we want in Putnam County? If you sit back and look at how many we already have, they'll just keep going through Putnam County. And I just want something else there. I don't want another dollar store right there in
Mr. Kilbrew, Mr. Chairman, would you permit me for a second?
Yes, sir. Mr. Holmes?
And I don't mean to usurp the province of the city attorney, and if she disagrees with anything I say, it's hard for me to take off my attorney hat sometimes.
It's hard not to sit here and look at the attorney. I'm nothing to you. I'm sorry.
But it's important that the board focus on the question before it.
Right.
Obviously, in the context of an annexation, land use change, and rezoning, and we all know that the annexation, of course, is what it says. It's taking a parcel that's in the county and bringing it into the city. The land use change has to do with our comprehensive plan. And as most of you know, under our Growth Management Act, the State Growth Management Act, we're supposed to have a comprehensive plan which includes a future land use element. And that future land use element sort of looks into the future and designates how property is to develop. And then zoning is supposed to comply with that future land use element. So in this case, this property would not be in the city's comprehensive plan because it's not in the city right now. So the three questions before you are annex it in, meaning bring it into the city, then what do you change the future land use element to be for this piece of property? And then rezoning it in accord with the future land use element. I know that it's difficult not to think about some of the practical issues, and I'm not criticizing anybody. We all naturally think about the practical issues, trees, what building is going to be there, et cetera. But if we recall and we apply the law says the specific use, whether it be a Dollar General or a Dollar Tree or a whatever, isn't the question before you. The use is it appropriate to bring it in? And Mr. Sammons gave you the criteria it has to meet. And if we bring it in, then what would that piece of property, how would it fit in our plan for development? It's on a major highway, or I don't know if that's, I would assume that's an arterial road there, 4-lane there. So would it be a residential lot? Would it be in future land use for residential? Would it be future land use for office? Given the uses around it, you'd say it's probably, I think staff has recommended that it would be commercial. And then zoning would be consistent with the future land use, which in this case, our C2 is for vehicular-based traffic. That's our C2 states that it's a use that is primarily centered around vehicular traffic, which that would be. So then you have to assume that things like the tree ordinance, the landscape ordinance, and those things will be enforced. But just to, so that we don't maybe set ourselves up for a challenge, with all due respect, I'm not sure that we're able to pick and choose between a drugstore and a Dollar General in the question that's before you. And again, I'm not being critical of anyone. I'm not criticizing you for having practical concerns. Just saying that given the law that we are applying, the factors are annexation, the criteria that Mr. Sammons gave, contiguity. In this case, he said it actually would eliminate an enclave. Remember, it's C2 already. And as the young lady said, it's C2 county. They could put a Dollar General, or Dollar General is it, there right now. They just wouldn't have city water and sewer. And they wouldn't have to have any change of zoning, but they'd be in the county. So we're eliminating an enclave, bringing it in the same zoning category that it exists right now. It's a vehicular-based use, meaning it fits our C2 category. And then as far as Mr. Masters was right in a sense, anything that's zone C2 might be Dollar General today. It might be something different tomorrow. However, our code does require that gas pumps have a conditional use, as I recall. So you couldn't throw gas pumps in there without additional permissions. So just to try to keep us in focus. And then obviously you all are entitled to have your opinions about the criteria. And I'm not trying to tell you what your opinion should be, but I just don't want us to focus too much on some of the things that would be easily challenged. So if that doesn't, if that helps, I hope it does. And I hope it doesn't hurt anything.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Said you spoke that pretty good for a city manager. We have any other discussion or any other questions with the board? Hearing none, I'll now call for a motion on this.
I'll make a motion that we bring it in.
I hear a second.
Yeah, does this need to be 3 motions?
Yes.
Okay, would you want to redo your
Annexation
motion?
first.
Sorry?
Annexation first.
Yes, sir.
You want me to take it?
Okay. All right. I make a motion that we accept the staff's recommendation to annex the approximately 1.53 acre property into the city and that it be approved. And staff further recommends that the request to amend the future land use map for Putnam County Commercial be approved. Staff recommends that request to rezone Putnam County Commercial Retail C2, the City of Palatka Commercial Intensive C2. All of those items are in my motion.
Is there a second?
If we
I
can
second.
handle them all together, I'll second.
Is that okay to
Excuse me, we need to handle them
separately?
separately, yes.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Deloach, would you like to make a separate motion on each one of the motions you just made?
Okay. All right. First and foremost, I will make the recommendation that we annex the 1.53 acre property into the city.
I will second that motion.
Staff's recommendations.
Yes.
There is, Mr. Deloach, there's a motion by Mr. Deloach, a second by Mr. Barnes. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
So there's 6 to 1. Would you like to do your second motion, please, Mr.
All
Deloach?
right. Next motion, further recommend that the request to amend the future land use map from Putnam County Commercial CR to City of Palatka Commercial CR be approved.
I will second that.
There's a motion and second on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
I'd like to make another motion that we accept staff recommendation to request a zone from Putnam County Commercial Retail C2 to City of Palatka Commercial Intensive C2 be approved.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
There's a motion on the floor from Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Barnes. Is there any discussion?
Just don't disappoint me again. I'd like to see some trees out there.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. That's all three of them, right? 2, 3. Okay. Now we should move on to case 21-02. Request for a conditional use permit for a child daycare facility in the R1A zoning district.
The applicant is Robert Milliken. The agent is Wanda Lewis and Marcy Miller. This is a request to have a 24-hour per day, 7-day-a-week childcare center to serve the families of Putnam County, to deal with people who do different shifts and stuff like that. There's 2 levels, actually there's 3 levels, but there's 2 levels in our ordinance of child daycare. One is 6 and under, which is considered a single family, would be required, it would be allowed by right in the R1A district. The other is one where they deal with more children, and that's what this one falls into, and it has to be approved by a conditional use permit. This is in the old Milliken Insurance Company. That's the property in question. It's 0.22 acres. It has a parking lot, as you, almost everybody's gone by that many times, on the side of the property on Hudson Road side. The future land use map is all residential light. The zoning is R1A, north of Krill Avenue, C2 in the city and C1 in the city on the south side. The conditions, we've gone through those. I let the applicant know because I was concerned about there needing to be a change of use permit on the building for a larger than a single family daycare center. It will require a change of use permit to meet with the standards that the state has for daycare centers. So there will be some required permit when they do that. I went through the different sections that we have to deal with for a conditional use permit, and I find that the proposal meets those requirements. And I'm recommending that the conditional use be approved subject to obtaining all building permits required for the change of use and approval from the fire marshal. Any questions by the board?
Mr. Chair, before we go any further, I need to recuse myself from this because Robert Milliken is my first cousin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deloach.
And I have a question about recusing myself. I'm a property manager at Coldwell Banker. I am not this property's property manager, but I do handle rents and paperwork and stuff like that. So I'm familiar with this. So what do I need to do? Like I say, I do not manage this property, but I'm very familiar with it.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Hi, this is Valeria Thomas. You stated that you do not manage the property?
No, we have a commercial property manager, Mr. Spalding, and I basically am kind of the bookkeeper, and I handle residential. So I do not handle commercial property. Someone else does. But there again, the leases and stuff come across my desk. So I am familiar, but I do not manage the property.
Have you had any other contact, any other dealings at all involved with processing anyway with this particular property? Or
are you asking me if I've had anything to do, like
Yes.
say with the owner or the tenant regarding
Yes.
this issue?
Yes.
No, I've had no discussions with anybody about this request. I'm not familiar with that. I'm just familiar with the property.
I don't see an issue, Mr. Chair. She can go ahead and participate in the voting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thomas. And I want to give a full disclosure here also that I've had a conversation with Mr. Milliken about this. When he started moving forward with this, it was just a conversation, but there's no shape, form, way of, I have any contact with anything about the building.
Could you tell us like the essence of your conversation about this?
He was asking me questions of what he needed to do to move it forward and things like that. Just basic conversation, just nothing else other than that.
Was he asking you in regards to your membership on the planning board?
He did ask me if I was a member of the planning board. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to say that you should not participate
Okay.
in this, and that's it.
Okay. So with Mr. Deloach has recused himself, I've recused myself.
Okay, do we have enough for a quorum to vote?
I'm sorry?
Enough for a quorum to continue and to vote on this matter?
We have 5.
There would be 5, yes.
Okay.
There's a quorum, but we need to know who to pass the gavel to.
I will pass the gavel to my left to Mrs. Rawls.
Okay.
I want to let the record not show that I'm passing a lethal weapon to Mrs. Rawls.
There's a screen between us. Come on. Okay.
I have 2 speaker cards.
All right, we have some speaker cards. Christopher Owens. Come on up to the podium. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Since the members are unmasked, I'll give myself the same liberty. My name is Christopher Owen. I live at 2122 Krill Avenue. It's directly across Hudson from the Milliken Insurance Company. I have a prepared statement that I will read. It may seem a bit off topic, but it will bring it all together by the end. The property under consideration for a permit abuts the residential property where I live with my sister. If I may give a brief background summary of my experiences as a neighbor of this property, it may shed light on the reasons for my opposal to granting this permit. For approximately the last 25 years, it has been the office location of Milliken Insurance, and during those years, it has been the source of a steady stream of unwelcome visitors that enter our property from Milliken's parking lot. They have asked to use our telephone, asked for water for their radiators. They have asked for jump starts or even to borrow battery out of one of our vehicles. They asked to borrow tools. They would ask for gas money or for rides to other locations. They would freely pick vegetables from my garden, try to coax our pets away, some of whom actually did disappear. No trespassing signs proved to be no deterrent to these intruders whatsoever. We've had smash and grab burglaries of our vehicles, as well as having our mailbox rifled and robbed. There have been no shortage of visits at night either. On several occasions, we have found people siphoning gasoline from our vehicles, having used Milliken's parking lot as a staging area for their intrusions. All of these random, uninvited visitors constituted a liability risk should any of them have been injured on our property, even while they were carrying off our lawnmowers, bicycles, lawn furniture, and sundry other items. In addition to these annoyances, the proprietor's father, Milliken Sr., took an attitude of aggressive command towards my elderly mother because he was dissatisfied with the way in which she maintained her property. He was sometimes found walking around uninvited on our property to inspect it for issues that he wanted corrected or which failed to meet his exacting standards. The intrusive illumination and security floodlights at night spill over onto our property and illuminate it like a prison compound, essentially depriving of us any enjoyment of our yard in the evenings and necessitating the use of blackout panels on our west-facing windows. I would add that short of a restraining order, there seems to be no bureaucratic remedy available to ordinary citizens for addressing the kind of behavior from a business owner. Fortunately, Milliken has since passed away. And since the COVID outbreak, the retail activity at Milliken Insurance seems largely to have ceased. It has been a welcome period of peace after 25 years of fairly constant annoyances. Moving on, a proposal has now been made to establish a daycare facility at that location, which sounds harmless enough, but after our experience with it as an insurance office, which seems even more harmless, we are extremely wary and skeptical of any change. Although we love children generally, in this area of litigation, any contact with children, even accidental, is fraught with hazard. We can foresee unwanted encounters with overwrought helicopter parents and the attendant traffic snarl twice a day as said parents arrive to deliver and retrieve their offspring. The growth of traffic on Highway 20 and a burgeoning population of dogs in this neighborhood have significantly increased the local noise burden, and a playground full of small children is certainly not going to improve the situation. For while the sound of children playing is quite pleasant in small doses, you would probably find it less so when it must be endured daily, week after week, with no end in sight.
Mr. Owen, you're over your time. If you could wrap up.
Well, let me summarize then. It is worth noting that the applicant for the variance has not, to my knowledge, made any attempt to contact any of the neighboring property owners to gauge their reactions to this proposal. That is in itself a red flag. We strongly support small business, capitalism, and free enterprise in general. We applaud entrepreneurism, and we hate to rain on anyone's parade, but we believe this location is not well suited for a daycare operation. There is very little setback from the roads, and we feel the property is basically too small for the use proposed. I'll cut the rest of my comments for the sake of time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I appreciate that the recused members also took time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additionally, I have a letter from one of my neighbors. She asked to have it read into the record. May I do that?
Go ahead and give the letter to Ms. Kranz. Can he read the letter, or can you read it?
Ms. Thomas, may I read the letter submitted?
Shall I read
Hold on. Yes, Ms. Krantz, you can read it, but I think we should also fill out some kind of speaker card that's attached to the letter so that we can have it for the record that this was made by someone else.
The letter is given to us by someone who's not present.
I understand. Go ahead.
Mr. Owens, can you fill out a speaker card regarding the letter with the name of? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
The letter is titled 10 a.m. Tuesday, April 6th. The body reads as follows. I am not happy about all of the traffic and noise that will occur if a daycare center will be established on the corner of Krill and Husson Street. I am opposed to it and can't make the meeting. Yours truly, Julie Rice, 2407 Alice Street, Palaca, Florida. End of letter.
All right, the next speaker is Carla Ecker. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Carla Ecker, 2405 Alice Street. And you gotta forgive me because I get nervous. I'm just concerned about the traffic with the daycare there. And the main concern is that right behind Milliken Insurance is a drug dealer. And he's a convicted drug dealer. And that's my main concern because if you, I don't wanna give names, but if you check that out, it's not safe. I just feel like that's a concern. And the traffic, that's mainly what I'm here. I mean, I work with pre-K, I don't, daycare is, but it's just the kids and the traffic and the main drugs. So that's it.
Thank you. Is there any other public speaking? I'm going to close public speaking and open up for board discussion.
Ms. Fuller has advised that the phone calls waiting are for the next item.
We have a next item.
Do you have anything to say?
Whoever's speaking, please use the mic. Can't hear you.
Is this mic on? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Fine.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought we only had 2 items, so the people holding should be for this, isn't it? Or is there something else?
That was a third item.
Okay.
Number 8.
Okay. I just want to remark on what we're working on right now, the 21-02, the conditional use permit. I mean, I understand their concerns, and what I'm looking at is that request for a 24-hour per day, 7-day a week childcare center, which will be a lot of ins and outs. So I definitely see their concern. Just wanted to make sure y'all did read that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Is there anybody from, would you like to come up and speak and state your name?
There is Mr. Milligan. Where is he sitting back there?
I'm Awanza Lewis.
And I'm Bobby Milliken.
I'm the owner of the daycare. I've been doing in-home daycare for almost 21 years. And
I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you.
okay. I'm Awanza Lewis. And I've been doing in-home daycare for almost 21 years. And my reason for wanting to step out and do a center is well needed in Palatka because everyone knows there's not enough centers to hold all the children that are born every day here in Putnam County. But my main goal is to teach. And I want to do mentorship with the youth as well as the daycare. As far as the traffic flow, we pretty much, because we thought about that as well, but I think we have that mapped out. I'll have employees standing outside, so when they enter they're gonna enter in the parking lot off of, is that Husson Hudson and go straight through and exit off of Alice. We're gonna be standing out there getting the kids, the parents, unless there's an issue or they need to speak with me or a teacher, it's gonna be a constant flow like they do at the schools. So I don't think there's gonna be an issue with the traffic backing up, because that was one of my biggest concerns at that traffic light there. I was like, okay, we can't hold up this traffic light. And as far as the 3 shifts and the weekend, is greatly needed because, and I say this because I turn away so many calls, you know, and I've done that throughout the years because we have GP employees, we have the hospital, we have the nursing homes, and it's a great need, you know. And that's another reason why I wanted to open up a center. But, and as far as the noise, you know, I think the dogs in the neighborhoods are louder than the kids because I actually thought it was a kennel over there when I first, I'm like, is it a kennel? You know, with so much noise. But we're gonna work out the times of days, you know, there's only gonna be a certain amount of children out there at a time. And then the evening and night shifts, and even the weekend shifts, it's not gonna be as many parents, you know, just minimum. Because it's not gonna be a full house like it is maybe during the day.
Can I ask, how many kids, what are your plan on your top amount? Is it
Well,
here?
my DCF license, I had to take a halt to everything until we get this underway for him to come out. We did some measurements on our own. And he said, sounds like anywhere between maybe 35, 45. So no, nothing like 60, 70, 80 kids, no.
How big is the building?
Total square footage on the building is approximately 1,600 square feet.
Does that include a garage or is it all heated and?
That's the heated and cooled.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
Is there any further questions? Yes.
Whoever's speaking in the back, could you please come up? Or
Come
we
up,
can't
come
hear
up to
you.
the mic.
Please speak into a
Speak
microphone.
into the microphone.
Microphone, please.
I'm just concerned of the neighbor that you have behind you and
I need you to speak into the microphone, please. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm concerned of the neighbor that will be behind the daycare and the traffic that comes in and out of there, and just mainly that.
Are you concerned with the traffic of the daycare or the traffic of the
traffic
neighbor?
of Creel and Hudson, and the traffic, there's different kinds of people that come, all kinds, every time, at night or day. And I think,
Activity behind
yes,
there.
that's right, yeah. Sorry, I get nervous.
That's okay.
Yeah, so, and, you know, Mr. Miller can,
Okay. I've been up there during the day, during the night. I haven't noticed anything. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but I haven't seen any concerns. I do know the mother, the owner of the house. I don't think it'll be a problem. I'm not afraid. I don't think it would be a problem. And I don't see, like I said, I've been up there all times of night and I haven't heard cars slamming doors, you know, nothing that alarmed me. So, you know, what she's saying today, that's new to me. You know, not saying that it's not true, but that's new to me.
Madam Chair. I can't hear her.
Okay, we need to speak in the microphone.
And number 2, she said.
I have taken pictures, videos of certain activities of this person, and I have called the police several times. I did share with the police, and there was nothing done about it.
All I can say is, just like with my residents, if I see something going on, you know, that concerns me, I'll pick up the phone and I'll make a call. That's all I can say.
Ms. Thomas, do you have anything to add?
No, other than the fact that Ms., I didn't write her name down, has had an opportunity for public comment a couple of times. So
Okay.
we can move forward.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions from the board? We're past public comment, ma'am.
We close that.
We've already closed that. No other comments by the board? I kind of would like to make a comment. As far as Hudson Avenue, I am very familiar with that road because I lived off of Diana and Hudson for 9 years. And I was grateful not to live on Hudson Avenue because the traffic, I know it's a 35-mile-an-hour road. You rarely ever have somebody driving 35 miles an hour. To make the light on Krill Avenue, if you're going past Hudson and you're going to continue to go to Hudson all the way down, they try to make the light and they step on it. And there is no police activity that could catch these people because it's all times of the day and night. So it's a major thoroughfare, and it's just, Hudson is a major highway. So you have to consider, are we going to allow a daycare? Would you send your kids to that daycare? It's just in your own, and if we're changing it.
Might I address the board?
Yes.
In the 40 years that I've been there, I've never had any problem as far as there have been accidents. And yes, people do drive fast in both directions.
Yeah.
But I've never had any problem as far as injuries or anybody getting injured ingress or egress from the business itself. And from the gentleman who was speaking before, the business itself, as far as I know, had never caused any problems with far as other activities in the neighborhood being nefarious activities going on.
And my children, they'll be entering the back, well, it would probably consider the back door of the building, between the building and the garage. We're not gonna let them come up front, where the traffic light is, that main, because that was a concern for us as well. So they won't be entering, they'll be entering from the parking lot as the parents pull through. We'll be standing out there and walking through that back section.
Okay.
And the playground is gated and locked.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I want to ask something.
Go ahead, Earl, if you have a question.
This is for conditional use. Thank you, Edie. In the past, this is for conditional use. So in the past, we've attached stipulations of reviewing it in a year and certain things like that, that if there is a problem, we can pull the conditional use.
Ms. Attorney, is that something we can add to our motion?
Yes.
Actually, why would we, I've been there for over 30 years, and it's been, the reason we're here is there's been a problem with the zoning. I imagine it's because originally there was no zoning. It's been used as an insurance office for the last 35 years. Prior to that, it was used as a chiropractor's office for 2 different chiropractors. And I was, quote, unquote, grandfathered in. But I understand that with it going from an insurance office to going into being a daycare center, we're now entering into something that's totally different as far as what is going to be required as far as for fire extinguishers and other things that normally aren't associated with a regular insurance office type operation. And that wasn't one of them.
That's why you're requesting a conditional use, because under certain stipulations, it'll be okay in this zoning. So the board puts, that they look at that as to what you're going to do and the stipulations. And we can put them on there. If I'm not mistaken, we've done it in the past. Maybe we did something wrong. But we've had several that we watched them for a year, and depending on the complaints and such that came in, you pull their conditional use. It's a conditional use. It's not under the zoning. Here comes our city manager. Explain it to us.
And I don't mean to continually butt in. It's just that I've handled zoning law and land use law for literally 40 years, for the county for 17 and the city for 20. So many of those years, Mr. Wallace has been on the planning commission, and he's correct. The conditional use, like a special exception in the county, basically says that by conditional use, you might permit, by conditional use permit, by a grant of a conditional use permit, you might allow something to happen which might not otherwise be appropriate in the location, but with certain restrictions and safeguards can be made appropriate. So, and that's not a verbatim definition, but it gets the gist of what conditional use, how conditional use is defined in the city code. So unlike zoning, where you can't attach restrictions or stipulations, pure zoning, C2 to C1, C1 to C3, whatever, you cannot attach restrictions and stipulations. It's either zoned or it's not. But the conditional use you can. And while normally most land use changes are presumed to run with the land, meaning that once you get the whatever the designation is, it stays with the land regardless of the owner, regardless of time. Conditional use can be limited as to time or ownership, change of property, ownership, that sort of thing. You can also place restrictions, and I don't mean to suggest a restriction. I'm stating that you can place restrictions, hours of operation. I'm not suggesting that you do it. I'm saying that it is under a conditional use. It is within your province to place caps on the number of kids, for instance, that could utilize the facility, hours of operation, traffic patterns and issues and things. Again, I'm not trying to suggest that, and I'm not suggesting that you do any of that, but Mr. Wallace is right. You do have latitude with a conditional use that you don't have with a rezoning. And so to that extent, and it does include termination of the use or review at certain intervals, as you said. I didn't want to leave you floundering there, Earl. Trying to help you out for a change, and I hope you remember that. Yeah, I know you did a much better job of it, but I tried.
Microphone, please.
Please.
Okay, my thought on the amount of children that, say, this 1,600 square foot building can handle, that's really going to end up coming from the fire marshal, won't it? So, I mean, they're only going to allow what any building, what's going to be safe. Because, I mean, that popped up in my head. And then as I was looking back here, and that was, the things that obtain approval from the fire marshal. So he is going to safely limit.
They have very specific.
Right. So really, I don't think we should concern ourselves with that, which I was. And then I thought about the fire marshal. He's going to take care of that concern.
The fire marshal is listening in right now, so he can speak if he wants.
Also, DCF will also have a limit on the number of children.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Does the fire marshal have anything to add?
Yes, ma'am. I believe for daycares, it's 35 foot per square or 35 square foot per person. So you'll come up it'll be pretty light in that building, but I'm not positive of the exact numbers.
Does that include help or just strictly?
It includes everyone, So you do it based on square footage, and then that would be what they can have in that occupancy.
Which is about 45.71 people.
So, yep. That sounds consistent with what she said earlier. Yes, ma'am.
I've been in it long enough. Oh, we're just asking. We're
No
just
problem.
checking.
Oh, absolutely. No problem.
Okay.
It's an overnight. My concern is if it's a 24-hour service and it's overnight and people are sleeping in the unit, is there going to be a fire sprinkler system requirement?
Yes. I think.
Yes, ma'am. When you turn it into a dormitory, it's probably going to require that. Now, there could be a square footage concern where we can get around that based on firewalls and whatnot, but that would depend on the building and also the owner's preference. With sleeping and daycare, you're probably going to trigger a fire sprinkler, though.
And there's also a firewall. There's also a firewall.
The firewall.
Speak into the mic. Speak into the mic.
I got you. The questions that have been raised to us are the activities around there and the traffic. You know, the fire marshal, he's going to take care of the number of heads that are there, whether or not there's a sprinkler system, all of that. And the state is going to put all of their restrictions in there. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the activity and the possible traffic in and out all hours of the night and the proximity to a bunch of kids and the activity. Am I making? You understand what I'm saying?
I get the residential side of it.
So
based on
so if we put a condition on the conditional use, we put some restrictions and look at it again in a year, or if the activities become enforcement deals or however you want to put it, then we can have them come back and explain it or take it away.
Yeah.
And that, you know.
Well, my concern is we've not had one neighbor that lives in there. It's different if you go to work and then you leave your work. But if you go home and you're living there and you have all this activity around your house, and then you have the extra children aspect of it, and you had, you know, we have residents that live in that
So far,
neighborhood
you're
that
agreeing with
disagree.
me,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah, and we've got a lady over there, and we got a gentleman back there, and we've got a letter from another neighbor. You can't have that many neighbors next door to the thing. So.
Well, the two that live.
Previous letter was for the, okay, yeah, but I mean, we need to focus, like Mr. Holmes said, on the item before you, whether you're going to approve this conditional use, whether this was in a properly submitted conditional use for the use of that property.
Okay. Are we going to, we need to focus on the conditional use and
So that's what you want to do.
Putting restrictions on it is focusing on the continuing use.
And what kind of restrictions are you talking about?
What kind of restrictions?
I don't know, that's up to the board.
What are you having a problem with?
Huh?
What are you having a problem with?
Well, I can't talk around. apparently there's drug issues around there. A dealer on the corner across the street. And the fellow over here, he's having a problem with a lot of people in and out of his property stealing stuff, which to me means a drug issue. The lady over here, she's got her drug issue problem. The neighbor that wrote the letter, she didn't mention drug issue, but she's got a problem with the activity around there also.
But how
But
does,
okay, the issues that you're speaking of are something with the prior occupant. It has nothing to do with the present applicant at this time?
No, my understanding is the drug issue is currently, it's currently active on the one side of the property from where the daycare is going. So if we approve this for the daycare, knowing that the drug issue has been brought up several times, that's kind of, I mean, how do you put restrictions on?
Well, I'm not sure if that's
To stop
really.
someone else.
I'm not sure if that's really our concern. I mean, to me, it would be the owner of the business. It is in a sense. I mean, it is, I don't want to say it's speculation, it's hearsay for us. It is kind of hearsay. And I'm totally anti-drug stuff. So I'm not really sure if, to me, that should be more of the owner of the daycare. That's where her concern should come in. And I can be wrong. I'm just trying to kind of sit on the fence and listen and think about this. Is that our job to worry about that?
In my opinion, it's been brought to your attention. So it's kind of, should be a concern.
excuse me,
For us to be granting a conditional use to put 45 kids across the street from the situation, yeah, it's our concern. And
At the same time, she
wait a
said,
minute. I didn't create the situation. I have no firsthand knowledge about the situation. It's been brought to my attention by 3 different parties that are neighbors of the, and apparently they've been trying to get it cured for quite a while. But I don't think that putting 45 kids 24 hours a day, 7 days a week across the street from the situation is going to help the situation. That's Earl's opinion.
but
Okay,
at
is
the
there
same
any
time,
other-
she said that the police officers did nothing. So did
Is
they
there-
think it was a concern? I mean, is
Is-
it something?
Is there any other, okay, I'm gonna close the public comments and questions. Is there any other concern or any other questions from the board?
Ms. Thomas, if I may, Ms. Thomas, is illegal activity from a neighbor something that we can consider in this topic? I mean, it's not something that you can have any proof of, or it's all hearsay. It's,
Correct, it's something that you can listen to, but you don't have any proof other than one person, as far as I remember, for the drug allegations. The others were other incidents of recollections of issues with the previous property owner and the activities of his clients. I don't think
Go
that
ahead.
can be a determinative factor as for the alleged drug use. When there's been no action, as far as I can recollect, police action taken concerning this matter.
applicant, would you be willing to put a barrier up between your property and the neighbor behind you that's creating the issues? A fence or something? I mean,
At some point, yeah, I can.
what kind of barrier are you looking for?
I
Like
Privacy.
Privacy fence or?
yes.
And it's
yes.
kind of hard to do that because I actually wanted to do that just because, but because of the roots that's along the back, it's the back area is very, very narrow. And it's a lot of roots that grow.
There's oak trees.
Oak tree, and it's almost, I don't know how they would even put a fence up there. It's horrible, the roots, and it's like this thick.
What it all boils down to is the next door neighbor has got a child who is a adult now, who has been to jail for drug issues in the past, who apparently still must be having issues. Without saying names. I don't know that for a fact, but I know that he has been in jail in the past.
Go ahead.
I do have the jail log of a gentleman from 3404. Person, behind the property. He has been arrested 20 times. But I didn't bring it in here because that's a separate issue from where I was standing, but it's been brought up now, so I thought I'll mention it, that there is factual evidence that he's been arrested 20 times.
Okay. We're gonna close all public speaking. Any other comments by the board? If not, I'll call for a vote or a motion.
Madam Chair, I will make the motion that we approve the request for the conditional use permit for a child daycare as requested.
I have a,
With no restrictions.
do I hear a second? None heard. Motion dies. I'll pass the gavel to. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Can we do it with restrictions? The fence we're talking about?
Would the fence ease anybody's concerns?
I mean, I don't like the fact that there's somebody that owns property next door that's a drug habitual offender any better than anybody in this building. And would like nothing better than if he was wiped from the face of this earth. But the fact is, I can't do anything about it. And I don't feel that I should be held accountable by what he has done in his past. Now, I do everything in my power to keep him from harming any child. And if it takes putting a building as far as putting a fence up there, I have no problem with that. That's not an issue. But I don't feel that I should be held accountable for what somebody else does on their own property. And he doesn't own the property. He is a tenant there.
I'm not trying to hold you accountable for what he's doing, Bobby. It's a situation that we're going to approve to have these kids moved in there. And knowing the situation is next door, I just don't feel good with it. I mean, you know, that's me again.
One last thing, if I may. I'm here today because in November, I called my consultant and I wish she was here. And we asked, was it properly zoned before I even got the building? We were given the information that it was zoned for and was okay to have a daycare. So we moved forward. It was only until, I think it was January, that when the fire alarm system, the guys that had to get the permit to come and do the fire alarm system, they found out that that wasn't true. I guess whoever answered the phone, which they say she's no longer here, she saw where it was a family daycare, and I guess she thought daycare was daycare. So I've invested over $50,000 in this building. And now, you know, I don't know what to do because everything that I'm doing now, I should have been doing back in October had I been given the correct information. So to come in here today and say that I can't do this, you know, no one likes drug dealers. And like I said, we have neighbors that's drug dealers, but what can we do unless it causes a problem? I have no problem picking up the phone. I don't care if you're my sister, brother, if there's a concern, I'm gonna protect my children at any cost. So like I said, me being up there, as much as I've been up there at night, I've never seen a lot of traffic going through there. I've never heard closing of doors and it's quiet, you know, It's quiet. I don't even know if does he live there? I don't even know if he lives there. I know who she's talking about. I saw him there once when I was outside in the garage. So I don't even know that he even lives there. But all I can say is, I've invested everything that I've had because of someone's mistake when I called to see if I could get this building, if it was zoned for it, But all I can say is if I see any concerns, I know just about everybody on the police force. I'm gonna pick up that phone and I'm gonna call.
We are not responsible for a due diligence period when you purchase property or not purchase property, or how much you have invested. That's not
I'm not
the
saying
parts
you're
of the board.
responsible. I understand that. but
I
I'm just
feel, I mean,
letting you
I
know.
feel bad.
understand.
I feel bad, but the person you purchased or you're looking at purchasing the property from was aware of the drug activity. So for him to pursue you and to continue to pursue you for the purchase of his property, in my opinion, was a red flag. The second red flag is every neighbor that came in speaking against it for several different reasons, one including the drug dealer. And the third was we have a police record of over 20 arrests.
Madam
If
Chair,
something were to
if you-
happen, later on down the line, we don't want to be responsible for putting the children
What if
at
nothing
risk.
happens? What if he gets locked up and go to prison in 25?
That would be
25 years
wonderful,
and,
but-
next week,
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
would you advise Ms. Lewis of her appeal rights in this matter? And so that she can pursue that if she wants?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any person wishing to appeal any decision made by the planning board with respect to any matter considered as such meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. FS 286.105, persons with disability requirement accommodations in order to participate in this meeting should contact the city clerk's office at 329-0100 at least 24 hours in advance to request accommodations.
Excuse me. Is it the board's decision that because a drug dealer lives next door, that you are denying the petition?
No.
Deny anything, yeah.
The motion was made. It did not get a second. And it died to lack a second.
Okay, died for lack of second. Can I
Yes.
ask why?
Because the motion was made per staff recommendations and it died. There was no second. Nobody else wanted to second the motion, so it died.
I didn't second because there was no restrictions. That's where my mind.
Are there any restrictions where we will have peace of mind over this? And I think that's what it boils down to, in my opinion. Is there any way that we can, because I do think there's a real need for what you're doing. I do think there's a real need for a 24-hour daycare for the single parents who don't have anyone else and who work nights. But I don't have peace of mind necessarily over what we have been made aware of. And I do have concerns over the kids with traffic. So I guess what it really boils down to, in my opinion, is if we approve this with restrictions, what are the restrictions that would give us peace of mind, if there are any?
I mean, that's one of the things that was said.
Mm-hmm.
She's already addressed to keeping the kids in the locked building and the playground's locked and fenced in.
She
So
did.
That's an addition.
And have alarm systems, everything. Everything, light,
Security line.
security lighting.
I mean, personally, I think the privacy fence is a big deal. And why can't we come back in a year? I mean, 6 months. I mean, I don't know, we need help here. Help. And kind of look at it, see how things are going, like in 12 months.
I also agree. I don't necessarily think this is a bad idea to approve this, but I would like to have some restrictions that give me peace of mind over all of the situations.
So, Ms. Attorney, mean, has it totally really died, or can we come back?
I can't hear you.
Talk in the microphone.
So the only way we can do this is if she appeals it, or there's no way that we can come back with a motion with restrictions, or is it really, it's dead?
It's not dead because you guys have not approved anything. You haven't denied it. You haven't approved it. You just, nobody, you can do a request. I'm sorry, I'm speaking over you.
You're fine.
I didn't mean to. You can put a new motion up that has restrictions. If
Okay.
that passes, you can deny it, but you haven't done anything yet.
Well, that's what I thought, because we really didn't vote.
You can,
Okay.
no, you can amend the motion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Thomas.
I would like to amend.
You have to do a new motion.
Right.
No motion on the floor.
There is
You
no
have to submit a new motion on the floor.
Not for lack of a second, there's no motion on the
Right.
floor.
Right.
No motion to amend. Okay.
Right.
Somebody can make a new motion. That motion could be to approve with restrictions. That motion could be to deny. That motion could even be to approve without restrictions. There's no prohibition about a new motion,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
May I then make a motion for us to approve with restrictions, and then we determine what those are, whether that's just the privacy fence, or also, I like the idea personally of us coming back to this in a year.
Your motion needs to state the restrictions that you're proposing.
Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't
So-
sure what my
so
restrictions were.
So you could make a motion and you could state or propose restrictions. And then a second could occur. And then if somebody wanted to add a restriction or they wanted to take away a restriction, they could suggest an amendment.
Okay, then may I make the motion to approve with the restriction of privacy fence being added between that concerning neighbor, and also with us coming back in a year to determine if everything is okay? Can that make sense?
Because if it's not safe, then I wouldn't stay there. There's no
I
way.
understand.
I'm just saying, if anything should happen and I don't feel safe, I wouldn't stay there. I wouldn't stay there, no.
I'll second that motion.
A motion. Okay, so point of clarification, a motion was made.
I would like to make a motion to approve the conditional request with the
Conditional use.
restriction, I'm sorry. Tell me how I'm
Conditional
supposed to say it.
use. Yeah.
Conditional use.
Conditional use, I'm
Conditional
sorry.
use.
I
Yeah,
would
that's
like to
awesome.
make a motion to approve the conditional use with the restriction of a privacy fence being put in place, and us as a planning board coming back to check on the, how do we word that? Reevaluate, I'm sorry, reevaluate the conditional use in a year.
Motion's been made.
We need something, the drug activity next door.
Okay,
That-
she's made a motion though.
Yeah,
Somebody either needs to second it or not.
it's been seconded.
I'll second that motion.
A second's been made by Edie Wilson.
Okay, so now you have a motion and a second. And you can either, now you can have discussion. And if somebody wants to add an additional restriction or take away one, they could, y'all could talk about that. And then you could either amend your motion or someone else could move to amend the motion by adding or taking away, okay? But right now you have at least you have a blueprint on the floor. And now you can move to amend it, or you can vote on it like it is, or whatever you want to do.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I think somewhere in the motion, we need to have something that addresses the activity and the activity next door, the drug situation needs to tone down.
How do you address that properly?
I don't know. That's the attorney over there.
Outside
Well,
of-
I'm sorry.
How
that's the
how do you
attorney up there.
address it when it's not happening on the property where the conditional use is being issued?
I think the only way that we can, I think the only way we can address it is by asking her to place that privacy fence, because she can't control that property or that property owner, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be the only way that we could help that situation, is the privacy fence restriction?
Logically.
If that's the
And
board's.
we also, when it comes back to us in a year, we need to be able to, if the situation hasn't improved, regardless of who can enforce next door or not, if the situation there hasn't improved, the proximity of it to the situation next door, we need to take the conditional use back.
I like that
You say
idea, I
no?
think.
Yeah, that's,
The problem with saying that it would be rescinded or that the conditional use would terminate if the activity next door hasn't changed is, one, you really don't have good credible evidence about what the activity next door is, in all
Exactly.
fairness.
Well, he has evidence of being,
I didn't mean you personally, I mean the board. I mean, the board really, there's an arrest blog with 20 arrests, but I don't know how many of those led to convictions or anything of the sort, or if the person's there now or what exactly is going on. So you're
Or the
really
time
stretching a
period where they
bit
occurred.
to take that into consideration. But more importantly, next year, how do you gauge whether or not things are better or worse? Because you don't really have a good bar set now. And in addition, just as an example, to automatically say that it'll be withdrawn or terminated if that situation still exists, doesn't really take into account whether they've had any problems. What if there is somebody living next door still who's got a record, but they've had no problems at all in the year that this thing's been operating? I mean, folks, let's face it, there could be drug dealers living next to any of us at any particular given time. And if they're not impacting us in a way that we can articulate, I just feel like that we're kind of running a field. I mean, the traffic, okay, that's an articulable, demonstrable issue, traffic on the road, light, sound, all those kinds of things. But to deny it based upon the fact that someone may live, because you really don't have testimony that the person lives there right now. To deny it based upon the fact that someone may live next door who has been arrested, but we don't know whether they've been convicted or not, or at least I don't. That's pretty far out there on a limb, just in all fairness. I mean,
The other issue is that Fire Marshal Taylor says she's likely going to put a sprinkler system in. That's a pretty good cost.
well,
Either
there
for
are
Mr. Miller-
impediments here. I'm not gonna, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't want to speak, but
Yeah.
DCF may not even approve this site, quite frankly, because family daycare is one thing. All-out daycare is a whole different ballgame under DCF's rules and regs. I'm not trying to offer an opinion whether they will or they won't, but I'm just going to say, I'm glad I don't have $50,000 in it before DCF has approved it, because that may or may not get done. And if I were her, I wouldn't be putting a bunch of money in it until DCF.
Actually, he walked through, my DCF license guy walked through, and before I got it, and he just told me the different things that needed to be done, which I did. So it would have been approved by DCF. And that's what, again, when I was saying about the front door by the lights, we're not using that door to bring kids in. They're gonna be at the back, the parents. And like I said, it's gonna be a steady flow. And most of my parents drop off their kids like between 6 and 7:30. That's the major, which I think the school traffic is maybe a little bit later. It's a little bit later, because I took all of that in account before, when I looked at that spot. So if given a chance, I'm gonna make it work. And like I said, I'm big on, with crime, that's anywhere. I'm one of the ones, I'm not one of the ones that turns my head. I'm one of the ones that's gonna speak up, because I deal with children. So, and like I said, until she just said what she said, I had no idea, and I've been up there since, last year. I've been up there almost every single day and late at night. I've never witnessed any of that. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I've never witnessed any. So what she just said was totally new to me.
we have a motion on the floor.
Revisiting the conditional use in a year.
And what are we going to base that on? That's where I think that's where we're lacking here. Can we base it off if there's, I don't know.
Well, my main concern, I'll be honest, outside of the of the neighbor is traffic, just because it is a very busy road. It's on a corner and you do have young kids, and I understand you're gonna have them in a playground thing, but can we make the conditional on that and maybe something else? I don't know that we can on the conditional address the neighbor, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think we have to face a visitation in.
I can't hear you.
Don can answer me, but, or
Ms.
Mrs.
Thompson.
Thompson. Sorry about that, Ms. Thompson.
Thomas.
We don't have to base bringing it back in a year on anything, just gut feeling.
May I ask a
What-
question?
You wrinkled your eyes, Don. What?
May I ask a question? Ms. Lewis, do you have a rough idea what your total investment will be?
Ms.
Miss-
Ms. Thomas, can we get your opinion on this?
What's the question about whether you can bring it back within a year to reevaluate it?
Yes.
Yes.
And
With,
what,
with the restrictions, if you have the traffic and there's continued traffic issues or concern there, then yes, you can bring it back on that. But as I stated earlier, this concern that the board has about the neighbor and privacy fence, it doesn't really address the activity of the neighbors if it's not impacting the daycare or any of the activities of the daycare. As Mr. Holmes said, each one of us could be living next to drug dealers and we not know, as long as it doesn't impact us.
I don't really think the traffic is, there's too many ways out. So if I lived back there, there's too many ways to get out. I mean, you going at the red light at Hudson, you know, I come off of South 19 onto Krill. Most of the time I cut through. There's ways to get out of your neighborhood. It's not like you're going to try to get out. That's the only way you can get out. Everybody that lives back there has multiple ways to get out of that neighborhood. So I don't really think that, and I mean, the school is just right down the road. And they make it, they don't have any problems. You put cones out and get everybody to slow down. I don't know. But I mean, I think we just have the fence.
So then I could amend my motion if we are all agreed to only require, so we do approval for conditional use with the restriction of a privacy fence. Or security fence, excuse me.
Are you?
I will
amending
second
your-
that motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. Are you amending? your-
Amended motion is on the floor.
I was going to amend, yes, I amended my motion.
Well, wait a minute. Before, I think we had another motion that was on the floor that was seconded. So are we withdrawing that one or amending it or what are we doing?
I thought it was just my original motion.
I thought that I'm sorry, was sitting at the table.
I
that she
think-
Seconded,
Yeah, I think I seconded, but
yes.
I'll second the amended. And I know, we gotta have more motions. Let's make-
Would you withdraw your second?
And,
Would you withdraw your second? Will
Say,
you withdraw your
Say yes.
second to the motion?
right.
Yes.
Will you withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my motion.
There's no motion on the
Okay.
floor. You want to make a new motion?
Okay,
I would
start
like
over
to-
again. Yes.
I would like to make the motion to approve the conditional use with the restriction of a security fence.
And I will second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we have
So
discussion?
now I ask all in favor, say aye.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Oh, I'm done. Okay.
Is there any discussion?
security fence just on the side of the one neighbor, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that it? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same motion? Aye. 3-2 vote.
With the
Motion
nays
carries.
being Ms. Rawls and Mr. Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you.
So what's the outcome of the vote, Madam, Chair?
Motion passes 2-3. 3-2.
Okay.
Now, we should add this to the, I'll make sure we do, but there is a right.
Mr. Holmes, I can't hear you.
Mr. Holmes.
That's rare that somebody can't hear this.
Don't do that again.
We should, and there's no one else here, I don't think for, well, not at least this case, but there is a right of appeal for anyone aggrieved by the decision of this board. It has to be, the appeal has to be communicated to the, I believe it's to the clerk, but we can, I'll make certain that I give you the time frame.
It's
either
you,
10 or
Mr.
30
Holmes, in
days.
30 days.
30 days. So if anyone wants to appeal that's aggrieved by this neighbor, or there's not many neighbors here, or anybody else, they can, then the appeal would go to the city commission, okay? And you could appeal it too. If you don't like the conditions, you could appeal it too, okay? Anyone who's aggrieved.
I think it's gonna be on her property though. But
Okay, thank you very much. I've taken back over the chairmanship. Ed Killebrew. We will move on to the city commission item, agenda item 8. Discussion regarding an ordinance amending section 94-261 of the Palaca Municipal Code pertaining to the location of parking facilities for existing residential structures.
And I'm gonna introduce this and then I'm leaving.
You promise?
Said enough. Yeah, I do promise. I'll go to my office though in case you need me. Yeah, because I know that
I do.
Earl needs me. If nobody else does, Earl needs me. So this topic was brought forward by the city, and the history of it essentially is that there's been some paving ongoing, as you know, resurfacing of roads in the South Side Historic District. In the process of doing that paving and the infrastructure improvements, it was noticed that 3 houses did not have any provision for parking on the lot of the residence. Our ordinances prohibit parking in the front yard, and they prohibit parking in the right-of-way, street right-of-way, the area between the travel way and the property line. So these particular houses theoretically could park in the backyard, but because the way the houses were built, there was not enough room between the side of the house and the side lot line to get a car by into the backyard. So they had to park on the street. Thinking that it would be an accommodation to everyone and a safety issue, the city made curb allowances to provide for a 10-by-20 parking pad on those three properties, and started getting objections immediately from people in the area who said that they didn't want any parking in the right-of-way. The parking pads were going to be in the right-of-way, and so at that point, there was conversation. Somebody put a parking pad in who already had a garage, which added to some of the controversy. And so at that point, we basically said, we'll take it to the Historic Preservation Board, the Planning Commission, let you guys make a recommendation. From the city's perspective, we didn't really have a real position that we favored. We thought it would be preferable to have someone able to park off the street than on, but some people in the historic district think that that's not a good thing, that there should not be any parking in the right of way, and that you should park in the street. Again, I don't think the city staff has a real preference, but we took the matter to the Historic Preservation Board, and as your notes indicate, there was a recommendation from them. We're bringing the matter to you for recommendation, and then we're going to put it in front of the City Commission for decision. The ordinance that you see that's in your packet is basically an ordinance that incorporates the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Board. It was an ordinance that we had drafted, I think, before the board met actually, and they went along with it, as I recall there, but the minutes reflect exactly their statements, but I believe they were in favor of all of the passages. But your decision can be in essence, one of three. You can say that parking in the right of way is okay where the lot is configured in such a way so that it doesn't accommodate parking in the front yard and you can't get to the backyard. You can say parking in the right of way is good anywhere, or you can say you don't want parking in the right of way anywhere. Whatever your recommendation is what it is, and then the city commission will make a final decision. And as I said, the city wasn't really trying to advocate any particular position. Once we thought it was a non-controversial item and we were doing the construction, and we went ahead and configured the curb to avoid expense later on. Then we started getting the objections from people who said, no, we don't want people to park in the right of way anywhere. As I recall, the addition the Historic Preservation Board made was they were good with a 10 by 20 foot pad. They only wanted one vehicle to be parked there and no boats and trailers and things, just a vehicle. And they wanted to approve the composition of the pad. In other words, if they thought bricks or pavers were the way to go, then they wanted to be able to approve that in the historic district. You know, so I think that was the additional take they took on it. But so in any event, because we got objections and then we started getting counter objections, so to speak, from both sides, we just said we'll let the boards, the Historic Preservation Board weigh in, you weigh in, and the city commission can make a decision, and we'll go forward from there. Okay? And the notes or the summary that's in your package, I think, is a pretty good summary, and the proposed ordinance is there. And like I said, whatever your recommendation it is, it is. And answer any questions? If not, I promised Ed I was going to leave, so I'm going to leave, be in my office.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
What did those three properties do before everything fell apart?
Well, there are some people, and I don't want to say which one was doing which, but some were parking on the street, I believe. Some were actually parking in the right of way. It's just they weren't parking on any kind of a paved or designated area. So they were just parking on grass. And that's kind of what I think prompted it. We thought having a designated area, a 10 by 20 pad, was preferable to just parking on the grass, but everyone didn't think that way. So that's why we, you know.
And the one that you got marked up here, I see that's yours, right?
Right, the one that's marked up has the existing ordinance, and the strike throughs are the language that would be stricken from the existing ordinance, and then the
If I read it right, it allows the three to put in a parking pad that's agreeable to the historic district. And then from then on, you gotta build your dwellings so you can get
Right.
in the back.
Right, at paragraph 5, the stipulations are that except for driveways, the area between the travelway of a street, road, or highway and the property line shall not be used for vehicular maneuvering or parking. Now, that's the existing ordinance. But then we added, subject to the following exceptions. A, the Board of Zoning Appeals may authorize use of the area between the travelway of a street, road, or highway and the property line for vehicle maneuvering or parking, provided that, so it would first have to go before the ZBOA, provided that the parcel or lot possesses a residential zoning classification, so it has to be zoned residential. 2, there is a completed residential dwelling unit on the lot as of the date of the passage of this ordinance. So that addresses what you just said, Earl. If you build a new house, you need to accommodate for parking, right? 3, because of the lot size, configuration, or the location of the residential dwelling unit on the site, the lot has no side yard through which vehicular access to the rear yard may be gained. So that is self-explanatory. 4, there is no garage or carport on the lot which was designed to accommodate a vehicle and which is accessed by a driveway leading from an adjacent street, road, or highway. 5, no more than one parking space per residential lot may be authorized with dimensions not to exceed 10 feet in width and 20 feet in length. The surface of the parking space shall be concrete, brick, or other masonry material as decided by the Board of Zoning Appeals, with consideration being given to the character and architecture of the neighborhood in which the parking space is to be authorized. And then last, if the residential lot at issue is located within the designated historic district, a designated historic district, so that could be north or south, the request for parking space shall be presented to the City of Palatka Historic Preservation Board before being considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Historic Preservation Board may, by majority vote, make recommendations to the Board of Zoning Appeals regarding the design of the parking space to include the material which comprises the surface of the parking space. The recommendations of the Historic Preservation Board shall be duly and in good faith considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals. However, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall not be bound to follow the recommendation. And then the last is just legally indicating what the variance criteria are. So that's what we had put together.
Where does it talk about boats and abandoned cars?
It just, let me go back to it. I think it says, I thought it says vehicles. See, it says shall not be used for vehicle maneuvering or parking. So it's vehicle only. It doesn't, you could add specifically if you wanted to that. I think the Historic Preservation Board wanted to add the didn't include a boat or a trailer, and that can be added, you know, and your recommendation could be to add that for sure.
I think that ought to be added because I rode around through there and there's some boats and there's some boats that they're waiting on the dry rot and fly away.
Mr. Wallace, I think you need to be on the microphone when you're talking. Well, there's nothing between us.
We could hide those boats with a tree or a billboard. Oh, no.
I'd like to see boats put in here, boats and
Only
abandoned
got-
vehicles
you
and
got two-
such.
You got two calls.
I know that part of it.
Okay.
So if you can hang
Want me to
on.
stay?
That's what she recommended.
Just in case.
That's not what's in the ordinance back here.
And so let me ask this question. Is this meaning the city of Palatka? And then we're also talking about the historic district?
Yep,
Okay.
it's the city of Palatka because right now, citywide, parking in the right of way is prohibited. I know people do it, but
10 people will park in a yard.
I know there are enforcement issues, but we're trying right now, we were trying to just, as I said, how I told you how it started. It started with no good deed goes unpunished.
And
So
it needs to be done, yeah.
All right, so your proposed ordinance here, that's for the historic district, right?
the
That's
city of Palatka.
citywide. I don't think it's bad for citywide.
I didn't think, well, I'll leave my opinion.
You're
but
not supposed to voice it.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, take it back.
Okay, I think we have, do we still have two callers on line for this, Ms. Krantz? Line 2 and line 4? Yes, this is Ed Killebrew, Chairman of the City Planning Board. You have a comment about this ordinance? Hello? Hearing none, I'll go away from that line. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. This is Ed Killebrew, Planning Board Chairman.
Hi. Yes, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Pam Garris. I live in Flagler Beach, Florida. My family owns commercial property since 1978 at 110 Highway 19 South in the city limits of Palatka. The reasoning for no parking pads in historic areas except for extreme exceptions is it is against current city codes, which states there is to be no parking on the right-of-way, that is the grassy area between the sidewalk and the curb, which is the accepted tradition in historic districts and other deed-restricted neighborhoods. This is in adherence to accepted aesthetic traditions for the beauty of the landscape. These standards, in turn, protect the values of the properties in such valued historical areas. Any less practices make these valuable areas look like a trailer park. 2, covering the right-of-ways with parking pads obstructs the repair of sewer lines, utilities, or cables laid in the right-of-way. 3, taxpayers in the city should not have to pay for a luxury parking spot for individuals who seek one when their property meets no special exception. This should apply for the entire city. 4, historic cities, for example, St. Augustine, do not allow parking of any kind in the right-of-way. They have granted reserve parking on the curb in front of residences when a special exception is made, not in the right-of-way. 5, these accepted norms in landscape design are legally protected by city codes for a reason: to preserve the beauty and values of neighborhoods and to make a city beautiful, thus desired by prospective buyers and potential taxpayers of the homes who will bring economic prosperity to Palatka, which is greatly needed. Finally, who granted the pouring of a parking pad in the prohibited right-of-way area in front of 313 Emmett Street? Which city employee would have been contacted for this violation of code? It didn't go to the planning board. It didn't go to the historic preservation board before it was poured. That is a big faux pas there that somebody needs to find out who did that. 7, the right-of-way where the pad is located is public property, and therefore, if allowed to remain, is legally eligible for use by any citizen or visitor. It is not the sole property of the home which it fronts. 8, the pad at 313 Emmett should be removed since it was illegally granted and violates the city codes, period. There is no special need for the property according to city ordinances. That house has a driveway. There is egress to the property. It was not vetted by the planning board or the historic preservation board before its execution, as I've said before. When an individual purchases a home in a historic neighborhood in all cities or a city with the ordinances like Palatka, they know that there are rules or special regulations in the historic neighborhood, especially. When people buy a historic area, they seek out those neighborhoods because they are held to a higher standard and property values rise proportionally more than other areas since codes are strictly followed, or they should be.
Ms. Garris.
Palatka.
Ms. Garris, if you
I have one last.
If you would wrap up, please, you're right at the end of your time.
Sure will. I appreciate it. Thank you. The aesthetics of a historic neighborhood are strictly protected, and the result is proper, authentic preservation of the homes, beauty, and higher property values. This is what we should all support. This is currently not strongly being supported and enforced by our city. We need to make the correct decision on this parking pad error and promote the proper care of the city of Palatka's historic neighborhoods. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Garris.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have one more on. Yes, this is Ed Killebrew, Chairman of the Board, Palatka Planning Board. Would you give me your name and address before you speak? And you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, Lucy says now, 819 Laurel Street, Palatka. I live in the South Historic District.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Do you have anything else to say?
I thought that's all you needed was that information.
Yes, ma'am, but did you call to say something?
Yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm calling about the issue of the parking pads in the historic district. First off, I know it's against the city codes to even put those in. And one of the big problems of the historic district is that nobody has been enforcing codes. And a perfect example is we've had many homes who have gotten to the point where they're in such bad shape they'll probably have to be demolished. And these homes have been turned in time and time again for some kind of restrictions, code enforcement of some sort. And also, there's a lot of other homes, several of them have got boats in the front yard. A number of them have got junk cars and general trash in the front yard. And nobody's enforcing the codes at all. Now, we're living in a historic district, and supposedly the code should be stricter. I know they are in other parts of the United States because I've lived in other areas in historic districts. St. Augustine is definitely nearby. They're very strict on what you can and cannot do there in St. Augustine. And Palatka, unfortunately, over the years, they've been allowed to tear down many historic buildings and not enforcing codes. So I feel like it's very detrimental to allow these parking pads. It's just Another item that's going to take away from the neighborhood. I know that it's been brought up that the streets are narrow and that it's a problem for vehicles to get through, like emergency vehicles. But the easy solution to that is you just put out signs that says no parking on the side streets. So that would be my comment, but I'm definitely against it. And we've had a lot of discussion in the neighborhood about these parking pads, and the ones that were poured without getting permission from the Historic Preservation Board. And I think that's the problem right there, is that City of Palatka is not watching out for the neighborhood. So it's up to the residents in that area to voice their opinions, and we'd like some action done to preserve what's left of Palatka.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Your time's, is that all you got to say? Your time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Stay well. The two on line 2 on mine blinking. Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, this is Ed Killebrew with Palatka, the City of Palatka Planning Board. You have some discussion on the article we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm against this. Tony Harwell, 215 Dodge Street. I'm opposed to the parking pads. The code was written in a manner which protects all the citizens and all the resident properties in the city. And these are generic codes that have been used all over the country, all over the state. They were put there for a reason. And if you look at the original code section, it's very clean cut and simple. The language that wants to be added, look how complicated it is. That should tell you something right there. The aesthetics of the environment are very important, not only in the historic district, but in citywide. This is something that came up because somebody wanted to have a parking pad, and they still want that parking pad. They want to keep it, so they're fighting for it. Under the guise of them having parking problems, well, there are no parking problems in Florida, or in Palatka. And then again, who's going to pay for the cost of these parking pads? Who's going to pay for the cost to dig them up when they need to get to the utilities? It just goes on and on. There's 3 properties in question in the historic district. One of them has a light pole that should have never been put into place in front of the parking, in front of access. They're going to move that old light pole and they'll have access. The other is a 4-unit apartment building. They all park around back. There's never been any issues. And the other is on Emmett Street, and that person cannot park in his front yard unless he parks parallel. So if you're going to make an exception, have people that don't have access park parallel in their front yard instead of the public's right of way. Anyway, I'm totally against it. It's not a good thing. No other city that I know of allows parking in the right of way in residential districts. It's an aesthetic value sense there. It's nothing more than common sense. HOAs don't have these. They don't allow it. And the city of Palatka is also an HOA, just with less restrictions. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Harwell. Stay well.
You too.
Do we have another line now? No. You have any other comments, Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Wallace had a question, and I think that's why I stepped back up.
Mr. Wallace, the microphone, please.
What's the problem with just leaving the ordinance the way it is?
Leaving the ordinance the way it is,
Yeah.
it would prohibit parking in the right of way. There would be no parking pads, and so it'd be street parking only for those residences that don't have a driveway or a carport or can't access the backyard. And
There's only, if I understand it right, there's only 3 of them, right? You've got the street addresses there.
there were 3 in the historic district that
Yeah.
we had, and
So why not grant some exception for those 3 and those 3 only and just leave it like it is?
I think that's what we did. If you read those conditions, it states that it can only be, I'm not sure there was the only 3 in Palaca, and that is a Palaca-wide ordinance, but it does state that it would only be available to a residential property where they don't have the ability to reach the backyard, and there's no driveway or garage, and there's no place for them to park. So it would have to meet those criteria. Those 3 would meet it. I think there's a 4th that did pour a pad that would not meet it. But that's a code enforcement issue. I think there are 3 in the historic district that would meet the criteria. That's my belief from what I've been told by Public Works.
So as we discussed it a minute ago, it's basically the same, allowing for those 3. And all the extra verbiage in there is for what?
It's because there may be another residential property that meets the same criteria. And so I didn't think it was wise to draft an ordinance just to accommodate 3 particular properties. I think the criteria should be designed to safeguard the issues at hand, but any property that can comply with the criteria should qualify regardless of who owns it or where it is. And, it's interesting to me, although it's a comment that I probably shouldn't make, but Green Gables Inn, which I think was owned by Ms. Garris's family at one point, it's got a parking pad in the right of way. And when it was put there, I don't really know.
We granted that.
Okay. Okay, so it was put in there. But you can't approve something that violates an existing ordinance or law. So if you really wanted to get technical about it, you approve something that violated our code when that was approved. But they seem to have used it and it seems to be working okay, and I don't hear any complaints about it. So we just didn't. And again, I guess I don't think with a historic mind from our perspective. Some of our streets are 16 feet wide. You put a car on each side of the street, of the 16-foot wide street, and you may not be able to get between them. You probably can if there's no way you can if they're close to each other. And we were just thinking about it from a safety perspective, and they're right. Rescue vehicles trying to travel down the road with cars on each side of the street. It didn't sound like the most, appropriate way to go. But then again, I don't think with the historic mind that some do and didn't know that was an affront. But as I said, the city's perspective, we don't have a position. We're not trying to advocate. We thought it was a good idea for the 3 properties, and we made the curb accommodations, and then the issues arose. And so we said, well, rather than us making a decision, we're going to see what the board's historic preservation and you think about it, and then the commission can decide, and whatever is decided, that's what we'll go with.
So what are we going to do? Are we going to make a motion that the planning board says we like the new proposed ordinance?
Or that you don't, or that you don't.
Either way,
Yeah, we'd like a recommendation from you that I could take to the city commission, and then whatever the city commission chooses to do, they're the only ones that can enact an ordinance, obviously. So we were just trying to give them the benefit of input from the citizen boards, which was the Historic Preservation Board, which interestingly enough, the Historic Preservation Board thought it was a good idea with the safeguards. And then then the commission will be the ones to consider the recommendations and either change the ordinance or not, whichever they choose to do. And we are, most of you know, we've got 1 code enforcement officer and over 3,000 houses in the city of Palaca. We revamped the code department. We had our first magistrate meeting in February. We went to a magistrate system. We are now with a new department under a totally different, in essence, concept. We are moving forward with code enforcement. But as I said, we're not a rich city. We got 1 code enforcement officer. We're taking complaints based upon first health, safety, and structural issues. And we have had hearings. We are going to have a hearing every month, and we are bringing code cases to that board. But they won't just be in the historic preservation section because we got a whole city that, and I totally agree, we need code enforcement.
I saw the city code vehicle, and I was wondering, it used to be police department.
It was.
Which was not, I mean, I won't go any further, but I was glad to see the vehicle.
Right, yeah, we have a full-time code enforcement officer and we're doing our best to come up to speed. And we've had good success. We're now starting to make reports at each city commission meeting. We're getting voluntary compliance, but we're also taking those cases where we don't have voluntary compliance to the board for assessment of penalties and fines. And we're trying to come up to speed, and hopefully, within 6 months or so, we'll be able to add another code enforcement officer. But that's a different issue, really. I mean, it's a different issue, but we are trying.
Ms. Wilson, did you have a question?
Well, I mean, my response is they have to have somewhere to park. I mean, I know I live in where I have a driveway, but if you park right, we can get 4 of us in there. But I happen to have a long driveway, but it causes issues. So I don't know what the solution is. They have to have somewhere to park. So that's the only solution. I mean, where does historic people want them to park at?
Mr. Barnes, did you have a comment? Ms. Ross? Okay. My comment to that, if anybody, George, you, okay.
My recommendation is exactly what they've done, taken on a case-by-case basis, just like the 3 addresses they have on 2 on Kirkland and on Emmett Street. Everything needs to be done case by case, and because they have to have a place to park, and not take away from what the historic board does. So not every single house should do that. So it should be, I recommend.
I can't hear you, please.
Do the case-by-case basis.
Hello?
Mr. Deloach, I'm being told that your microphone's not on.
My recommendation is just as they've done before, is they've approved these 3 houses on a case-by-case basis when they need that parking, and there's no other alternative, just like there's been here. I think that we should make that available to them.
Okay.
I'll
So-
second that motion. Oops.
If we're making this a motion on a case by case, does that include the whole city has to come in? Or is this just the south side?
The ordinance as proposed applies to the entire city. But remember, you have to meet those criteria. And the criteria are you don't have any place else to park. I can reread them again, but it applies citywide. If it's in the historic district, if the property is located in the historic district, you have the added element of it having to go before the Historic Preservation Board as well as a zoning board of adjustment, so that the Historic Preservation Board can weigh in on aesthetics, for lack of a better term. But the ordinance itself would apply to the whole city. However, any lot to be eligible would have to meet the specific criteria that are there, i.e. residential only, not commercial. 2, it can't have accommodation for parking. 3, it'll have to be 1 spot, 10 by 20. And 4, and I think the Historic Preservation Board recommended, and I agree, that it's not for parking of boats or derelict vehicles or something. It has to be for a working vehicle. And then I don't remember the rest of the criteria, but you'd have to meet those criteria before you would qualify. So if you got a driveway, you got a garage, you can get to your backyard, because we don't prohibit parking in the backyard. If any of those factors are true, you don't qualify. So it limits the scale, and understand none have been approved at this point.
Right.
We put the curb cuts in, then the complaints began to come in, and we said, okay, let's hold up on everything. Let's go ahead and get the citizen boards to weigh in, and then the commission can decide. Because right now, technically, as the statutes or the ordinance is written, there is no parking in the right of way, but people are doing it. And so we thought that we'd be taking, from a safety perspective, we'd be taking the parking off the streets. From an aesthetics perspective, we thought parking on a nice pad, especially, and if it's in historic preservation, they could decide whether they wanted pavered or whatever, was preferable to having it parked on grass. And if the property had a driveway or a garage, or they could get to the backyard, they weren't eligible anyway. So we thought we had narrowed it down enough to make it, available to only a few. And with the safeguard, we thought it was preferable to what was happening, but obviously everybody's free to have a different opinion.
Mr. Moore, do you have a question? Like you were reaching for your mic. That's the only reason I was doing that. Ms. Owens, any question? My only statement to this was going to be that, I mean, you know, if you cause cars, if you take cars to where they can block the streets and then things like that, that's the only issue that I have with it is the fact that, I mean, well, we already have that. And we all know that, but I mean, you kind of making it the way that I read it, maybe I'm wrong, that the cars could park in the right of way.
Only if the property meets the criteria
Okay.
that are there. So
Okay.
we're not just saying carte blanche, everybody can park in the right of way. If you did that, you would have issues of infrastructure
Right.
and so forth and so on. But when, like I said, in the entire historic district, south side at least, staff was only able to locate 3 homes or
Okay.
3 residential properties that would qualify.
Okay.
So that's why we're on a limited basis. Again, we thought it was a good idea, but we're not wed to it or anything. If the board wants to say, no, we don't want parking in the right of way, then so be it. That could be your recommendation. And then ultimately, as I said, the city commission will make the decision, and whatever the decision is, we're going to go with.
Can I just get some kind of clarification? Is it, because I heard the 3 addresses and then I heard another address that wasn't,
Right.
somebody did
There's-
something.
There's
So
one
there's a
address, and
lot
I
of-
won't call names.
No, but there's,
But there is one person
There's
that
a
put
lot
in
of
a
issue.
pad that would not qualify under our criteria. We asked them to remove the pad. They declined. They asked to be allowed to wait until there was a decision. Quite frankly, I asked them to post enough of a cash deposit so that it would pay for the removal of the pad if the ultimate decision of the commission was not to allow that pad to exist. They declined, but we're not taking enforcement action until we know what the ultimate decision is, because let's say you or the commission were to say, yeah, we don't care, anybody can put a pad in if they want to, then we'd be forcing the removal of a pad that the commission would then have said could exist. So we're waiting until we get a final decision. And then if the final decision should be that the criteria that we've set forth are the only criteria that would allow for the pad, then we'll take enforcement action, or it would be my recommendation that we take enforcement action against the one that doesn't qualify.
because it shouldn't apply that you do something and then ask for permission or
Right.
say sorry later. It should be,
Right.
these are the rules. Everybody's going to follow them,
Right.
you know?
I agree.
And, okay.
Mr. Lake?
So my recommendation is exactly where they are. The criteria that you set up, I think, works well with the 3 proposals that are there in a case-by-case basis. There's an exception to every rule, and I think we need to be accommodating to that.
Yeah.
And I think they've done an excellent job in setting up the criteria that is there.
I second that.
What is the pleasure of the board?
So we want to support the one that's redlined here.
It's not the new stuff, the new,
Yeah, the red one,
yes, not red lines out, yeah.
as it's proposed.
Right,
by-
exactly. So that's my motion. I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Accept the
I'll
criteria.
second it.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, wait.
No, go.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimously, it passes. Thank you very much.
I motion we adjourn this meeting.
Is there any further business before this board?
I'm going to my office now.
There's a motion and a second. Meeting adjourned.